So we are coming off of the end of Tekken World Tour 2022, and I want to start by asking: do you have any thoughts on the close of last year's tour? Anything you learned, and what surprised you, or and how you've adapted to it as we go into the 2023 tour?
It was definitely an interesting season for sure. It was kind of like the first tour that was done after the pandemic times, and so because of that, there were online events included as part of the tour, and there was an additional regional format phase that everybody had to go through in order to qualify, which made it a lot more stressful, I think, than it usually already is, especially on like the guys that have been known to just travel and qualify off the points. Now they had to actually go through their own region and prove themselves to be the best in one final tournament. So it was kind of like that dark cloud looming over everyone's head leading up to the global finals. It was a lot tougher to qualify this year because of that. But at the same time, the format allowed for there to be spotlight on a lot of lesser known regions by having designated spots set aside for regions such as like Australia, Oceania, the South Americans, West Europe, as well as East Europe, and a lot of the African regions, some regions that we don't know. We wouldn't normally actually be able to see them. They had automatic spots in the tour. So that was really cool to see kind of the matches unfold at the finals in Amsterdam. It was definitely had more of like international competition vibe, kind of like when you see it at a World Cup or at the Olympics. Every single battle was almost different country versus different country. Normally you'd have like a bunch of Koreans, a bunch of Japanese, a few Americans sprinkled in, a few Europeans sprinkled in. But yeah, there was definitely good notes and bad notes to take away from the format, but I was just happy to have a tour, man. To be honest, it was pretty fun. Learned a lot about where everybody stood, but at the same time, everybody's just looking forward to the next tour. You know what I mean? As soon as that last one wrapped, it was just kind of like, all right, hit the reset button. Let's go for the World Championship again. We didn't get it, so everybody's kind of motivated again. Red Bull Golden Letters this weekend, kind of like a nice little appetizer to the tour that's going to be starting later this month. So it's an exciting time right now for a game that's been out for like almost 8 years now. So
And speaking of that, like as we go further into like the post-pandemic competitive scene, is there anything in particular that you want to see out of Tekken World Tour 2023, like improvements that you would like, something that you hope turns out better this year?
Well, I think with the kind of reverting back to the old rules is already a step in the right direction. Now that we've had some time to adjust to like the climate of the world as far as the pandemic goes, bringing it back to just the global leaderboards and everything like that, and eliminating the regional format is pretty nice. And also the online tournaments kind of being thrown out is also, I think, a welcome change, just focusing more on showing up to offline events and everything like that. I think while in the meantime, I think they're working on the side to kind of find a way to bring in the online events in a way where it's balanced for the future tours. That's just my guess. But they just they heard everybody kind of like complain about certain things, and they fixed it for the better, I think. So it's going to be a good tour. A lot of players are viewing this year as kind of like the last Tekken World Tour for Tekken 7. Before everybody ultimately shifts over to Tekken 8. And it's like a last chance to be the world champion in this game that everybody has been playing for the last several years. So I think everybody's going to go all out, myself included, kind of leaving no stone unturned. Practice as hard as you can, because it's definitely going to be the last chance to call yourself the Tekken 7 champion. And it's something that I think is very important for a lot of us.
This is the closing chapter of Tekken 7. Like this is going to be the year, like we're moving from Tekken 7 to Tekken 8. Do you have any sort of closing thoughts on Tekken 7 as a whole as we sort of end the competition in that particular game this year?
Yeah, looking back, as someone who has been competing for over 20 years now in Tekken, I can easily and comfortably say that Tekken 7 did more for like the community of Tekken, the growth of Tekken, than pretty much almost all the other Tekkens combined. You know, we went from being a game that was just known as like, oh, that hard to learn game, and not a lot of people played it because it was boring to watch. to kind of being at the top of the order compared to all the other fighting games. It was kind of a complete turnaround, a complete 180. All the things, all the changes that were implemented were designed to kind of fix all of the critiques that have been made about Tekken for over a decade. And it was finally that game that was exciting to watch and to follow. So with that came a lot of new players, a way bigger community, a lot of growth, and of course, a lot more opportunities. Tekken 7 was the first Tekken where you saw players playing Tekken full time for a living, and that was really a great opportunity for us players. And so yeah, I'm just really grateful for all that Tekken 7 has done. And so with that, it's gonna be just a bigger, kind of more optimistic feeling for Tekken 8. Of course, we just kind of want to keep moving forward. Tekken 7 was great and all, but now I'm more focused on like the potential of Tekken 8, which seems to be unlimited at this point. Everybody's really buying in to fighting games, even casual people who had never really taken an interest. More and more people are picking up fighting games. So it's just a great time to be a fighting game fan, especially with the release of the new wave of consoles, like the new Xboxes and the new PlayStations are going to create for, fighting games with bigger capabilities than ever before. Street Fighter 6 has been teased, Tekken 8 has been teased, and Mortal Kombat, the new one, has been talked about a little bit here and there. And it's always cool to see that first wave of fighting games on a new wave of consoles, just to see kind of like technological improvements that have been made in terms of, most importantly, the graphics and stuff like that. And so, yeah, I'm just super excited, man. Tekken 7 was great, but it's time to move on. It's been many years.
For sure. And speaking of Tekken 8, like, what are your first impressions on that? What do you feel about it so far based on what you've seen about the game?
Tekken 8, the first thing I noticed was the graphics. It's beautiful. And definitely, as a longtime fan, it's something that Tekken's really been known for, the graphics, the music, things like that. So just sticking to that narrative of having the best graphics in the business, I was really blown away and impressed. And from there, it was just kind of a matter of seeing what kind of changes they decided to go with, what kind of direction they're taking in the game. And they really made that clear by highlighting the word aggression. They had like a whole 40-minute presentation where they just emphasized, no matter what, just keep thinking about that word. And with that in mind, watching them present the new changes and the new kind of look at the overall feel of the game, definitely they want players to take a more aggressive mindset when playing the game. Tekken is, of course, a game where a lot of people know it to be free-flowing in terms of the movement. You can move around, you can dodge attacks and everything like that. And that was kind of like the name of the game for the longest time, just moving around and dodging attacks, having this technical, advanced movement. But one of the things that worked really well for Tekken 7 was simplifying a lot of the parts of the game so that newer players can come in and have a lower barrier of entry. That helped a lot of people go from casual to competitive. So I think shifting the focus from like a defensive game to being more of an aggressive game helps casual players make that step even easier, even better. And I'm all for it. Like I said, Tekken 7 helped grow the game so much that whatever they did, it'd be nice to just continue to build upon that. I think that's where we're going, and I'm excited. And it's also like important to not get the hopes up, so that when the game comes out, you can have a fun time regardless. And that's really what's important. As long as the game's fun, I think I'm gonna have a lot of play time with it.
For the longest time, you've been a specialist, like widely regarded to be one of the best Jack players in the world. What do you want to see out of that character in Tekken 8? Is there anything you want improved, anything you want removed, anything that you want particularly polished?
I don't really have anything specific, like a move that I want toned or buffed, anything. Nothing really comes to mind. But what is important to me is kind of like, hopefully he's not like one of the worst characters in the game to where it's just so much harder work that I have to do in order to compete with some of the stronger characters. I hope he can just at least keep up with the rest of the cast, and that's just the competitive side of me talking. But to be honest, throughout Tekken 7's lifespan, I feel like every single patch, every single season, every addition, buff, nerf, was kind of made with like my play style in mind. Is almost as if like the developers have been watching me play and like getting ideas on what to change about the character based on what I like to do. So every time they made changes, it was like stuff that suited me. So I have been a happy customer all this time, which is why it's really hard to kind of nitpick at something that I want. I really can't think of it. It's like they're coming up with it for me. So when it comes to like the individual changes, I think yeah, I think the developers look at the players that use the characters and see and determine where they want to go direction wise. And I think, with the what I've been able to show with that character throughout Tekken 7, I gave him enough information, enough data to work with. So I'm excited to see what they can cook up for me. So that I can have fun in Tekken 8. But yeah, as long as he's up, he doesn't have to be like the best character. Doesn't even have to be really up there. But as long as he can maintain, a competitive match with all the characters and can win, then that's kind of how I feel right now about my character. So as long as that just stays the same, I'll be very, very happy.
Cool. And Tekken has been like, especially Tekken 7, like guest characters have been a big part of this this franchise. We had like Geese Howard, Akuma, Negan. Are there any particular guest characters, like do you have a dream guest character that you'd like to see make it over to Tekken 8?
It's hard to think of a guest character that doesn't really sound completely outrageous. I grew up watching like a lot of Power Rangers. So like to add maybe like a signature villain from the Power Rangers into the game would be pretty sick. Growing up, a lot of the actors, the martial artists that I enjoy watching, like Jackie Chan, Jet Li, Bruce Lee, those guys already kind of have a character made after them in the game, all my favorite heroes and everything like that. So it's hard to think, like guest characters, Power Rangers kind of comes to mind. Other than that, it's hard to like not get too crazy, like The Simpsons and Crash Bandicoot, things that I really enjoyed as a child would make me really, really excited to see in my favorite game. They could do it, but I just don't see it happening, like throwing Homer Simpson in Tekken 8, Nobody's gonna take us seriously anymore.
As we reach the closing chapters of like Tekken 7, do you have like a favorite moment of competition from your time in the previous game? Like anything that stands out in your mind that like that's something you're gonna keep from Tekken 7 as long as you live?
For sure. When I look back at Tekken 7's long history and all the events and tournaments that I've been able to compete in, during Tekken 8's lifespan was kind of like the first time that we were able to play in like large 1,000-seat arenas and stadiums. Like for example, we get to play at Evo every year in the Mandalay Bay arena, where I've seen a lot of like big name boxing fights happen. So that's pretty cool to just be able to play in that venue. All those people in there make it the most watched like live tournament of any fighting game each year. So Tekken's been in that arena a few times. I had the opportunity to play in one of those finals one year, and I made it really, really far. I got third place. So with that tournament being in the States, and at the time I was like the last representative from America, the crowd was especially hyped, and I was playing really good. So those are like the moments that I enjoy the most, is when the crowd is at its most hype. And it's even better when I'm at like the center of all that excitement. So to where you can feel the ground shaking off of everybody's cheers. So those are things that really stand out to me. Like the bigger the crowd, the more excited that I get playing in front of them. So I just think back to that Evo 2019 where I was playing in the top 3, and they were like, everybody was chanting like USA or whether it be that or whatever. It was really cool, really special to me, especially for like the longest time now. I consider myself like one of the stronger representatives coming out the country, and there's a great sense of pride that you feel when you are represented. And so yeah, those are the times that I've really had the most fun playing the game, was when I've been able to entertain everybody watching live, whether it be live or watching on stream. It was a good time.
And with all of the time that you've spent in Tekken competition, you've played a lot of people, like a lot of high tier players, a lot of champions. Pardon. But where we're at right now, and especially as we go into the 2023 season, are there any particular competitors, old or new, that you feel are like a distinct threat or just worth keeping an eye on as we head into this next year?
I feel like it's harder. It's easier to name guys that aren't a threat, just because there are so many threats these days. There are so many good players. I don't know. Everybody's a threat now. That was kind of like the theme of Tekken 7. All throughout all these TWTs and all these major events, you would see your favorite players, like the most legendary players, lose early at times. And it just goes to show it's so hard to stay consistent when the game is so competitive. Tekken 7 is easily the most competitive Tekken. You know, the opportunities that came about, whether it be big prize pools, big sponsors, everybody raised their level of gameplay. Competition was much stiffer. So, of course, you're going to have your big names, the guys that have been around in the previous Tekkens who shown to be competitive and consistent and whatnot, but at the same time, like throughout the last few years, especially with like the pandemic happening and a lot of new online players coming about and making a name for themselves just strictly from playing online, you got those guys that are just as good, and then on top of that, there's a good chance that they're more hungry than your seasoned veterans, like because they haven't really had the taste of like being consistent. They haven't had their reign of terror complete yet and everything like that. So it's like a whole new wave of new players that are really good and are using their resources to their ability, that's their abilities, like the YouTube and Twitch and everything. So everybody is a threat now, man. I remember the days of playing in a tournament where your first few rounds are super easy opponents, guys that's just learning the game. But nowadays, from the very start, like your first round opponent might be somebody who's a serious threat, and you just don't know. You got a big target on your back at these events with these guys practicing and everything like that. So it keeps me on my toes for sure. It's exciting. Everybody's a threat. Yeah.
As you mentioned previously, like there's a lot of data on you out there from so many matches online, so many VODs.
Yeah.
They have stuff to study, whereas like anyone you come up against that hasn't made a name for themselves, they have no idea what you're in for if they're a secret killer.
Yeah, you know, you don't have time to prepare for every opponent. So when you're facing those unknown guys, you kind of like coming into it with a blank slate as far as your strategy goes. You have to figure out the opponent slowly throughout the match. Meanwhile, they notice that they're playing a big name in the tournament. It's a big opportunity for them. So they've probably spent all the time in the world preparing. You're getting their A game. At the same time, you're kind of on your, you know, P's and Q's, watching out, playing cautiously. And that definitely could be a recipe for disaster. You know, playing cautiously against an opponent who's already knows what they're going to do every step, they plan it out, they visualize it and everything. So that's kind of how upsets happen. You know what I mean? Like that's how when the underdog beats the big name, that's usually what happens. They've been preparing for that matchup longer than the favorite or the top known player could have even understood.
To close this out, like considering all of this, the coming 2023 season, Tekken 8 on the way, how do you feel about the health and wellness of the Tekken competitive scene right now?
I feel great about it. I've always been someone who's, you know, been optimistic about the game in general, because it just doesn't really make sense to walk around being all grumpy about a video game in the first place. Like, if a lot of people I see complaining about the game, I always wonder why they just don't play it. Put the game down, go do something else instead of trying to make everybody else, ruin everybody else's day. So I generally bring like a positive attitude to everything. With Tekken 8, with the tour coming about, I'm just excited to even have a tour first and foremost. Like with this year being kind of like the last year of Tekken 7, everybody's looking for Tekken 8. I felt like it could have easily been a year where we didn't have a tour and we just kind of like were stuck with Tekken 7 playing it, you know, still going to these tournaments, but the MCO could have just shifted focus completely to Tekken 8 and everything. So the fact that they still want to support Tekken 7 really goes to show how much they appreciated and really enjoyed that game and what it brought to the community. And yeah, again, as a competitor, I'm really looking forward to having that last chance to becoming world champion. I'll definitely be practicing a lot. And at the same time, you know, the little tidbits of information here and there, little sneak peek trailers of Tekken 8 will be just enough to hold me over until the game actually does come out. You know, I'm patient. I believe in waiting for something if it's worth it. And definitely Tekken 8 is going to be one of those things that's worth waiting for, however long they take. The longer, the better. That way they can really put out a really polished product when the time is right.